Welcome to the SEEK24 podcast. My name is John Michael Lucido, and this podcast will feature some of our favorite podcasters recorded live at the Spoke Street Media booth during SEEK24 in St. Louis. We hope these give you a glimpse of the energy and passion from the conference and help you in your faith journey. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to a first episode of a brand new podcast that we're launching here at Seek. It's called Survivor's Bias. We'll get into the name in a minute. My name's Kyle Hyman.
And I'm Darnell Miller, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Yes. Exciting to have you as part of our live studio audience for probably the only time we'll have a live studio audience for the show.
Probably.
Yeah. Or maybe we'll enjoy it so much this will be the shtick. So one of the things that we want to talk about is art in the church in this show. And particularly, I think we can be kind of negative about art in the church. And you might say rightfully so. And you can look at today's art, whether it be music or paintings or our churches or music, and say, the Renaissance was really when we were killing it. Like Catholics were setting the standard for good art. And where's that gone? Like, where are we today with good art?
And so that leads us to the first question that we have of, what was the last great thing that you saw, that you experienced, that you heard? And so, Kyle, what was that for you?
The last thing? Like the most recent?
The most recent.
Oh, man. I don't know. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
It's kind of my thing.
I get it.
What I have to do. One of my favorites is a show called Saints Alive, which is an audio drama, particularly for families and stuff. It really appeals to children, but it gives you an insight into the life of the saint. A drama, so it's like acting and sound effects and stuff like that, and it makes it fun and engaging even for adults. Yeah.
So the last thing that I saw that was really good wasn't a Catholic thing necessarily. It was the Elvis movie by Baz Luhrmann.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it yet.
And it is just beautifully done, masterfully done, and it makes me really appreciate the format of filmmaking, the art and the craft of it, and what we can do with storytelling in that regard. And that makes me think of, like, where are those movies in the church? Yeah,
and I think a lot of times, at least some of the people I hang out with, really like to trash Christian movies, right? And be like, yeah, that was a pretty horrible, there's no like depth to the characters, or it's very, insular and like makes all the Christians look perfect and all the atheists look horrible kind of thing.
Yep.
I do think that we've seen a lot of progress in that, especially in the past decade.
Absolutely.
Things like The Chosen.
Yep, The Chosen.
Really well done storytelling and things like that. But I do think, I think it asks the question of like, what is our calling as artists, as creators, as consumers to really having a high level of expectations for ourselves and for the art that we're creating and consuming?
Yeah, and so I think that's kind of what we want to examine here, of kind of digging deep into ourselves, digging into the lives of other creatives, other creators, other entrepreneurs, to see what does it take to make something amazing.
Yeah, because one of the things, when you say the Renaissance was like our heyday for the Catholic Church, which I think has a lot of truth to it, is some of that I wonder is how much of that is survivor's bias? Like, it's the stuff that has survived, it was the good stuff. I'm sure there was bad art, there was bad music, there were ugly churches made in the Renaissance. They just don't exist anymore because nobody's taken any time to preserve them. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with survivor's bias, like one of the examples that they give for survivor's bias is like World War II, these planes come back and they've got bullet holes in them. And I don't know if this is a true story or if this is just an illustration, but they would say, okay, this is where the bullet holes are. This is where we need to reinforce the plane. When in actuality, you needed to check the planes that crashed, because these are the ones that have survived. And you don't examine the survivors for the wounds, but you look at the ones that have failed. And in business, we can do the same thing of saying, like, you get a lot of influencers on YouTube and stuff of like, this is how I did it. And if you just if you take my course and do exactly what I did, well, yeah, there might have been 1,000 other YouTubers that did very similar things, and you just happened to be the right place, the right time, had the right look, whatever, that you survived and 999 others didn't.
I know, and I can think of like 5 to 10 to 15 to maybe 100 other podcast ideas that I've started before this, that I've attempted before this, that haven't made it.
Right.
For good reason. And I think it's taking those losses, taking those failures and examining them and being realistic, praying on it and saying, well, what did I need to do better? How do I need to be better? And then taking the next step and trying again and trusting again.
Yeah, and I think we can call out bad art, like, and I don't want to be the one to like trash stuff, and especially like, specific things or anything like that. But where can we shed light and bring to attention the stuff that is good, the people that are doing it well?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the point of the show, is like every episode, can we point out something that's really great, some great art, and bring light to it, bring attention to it. Also maybe get behind the scenes. Like, can we talk with the creator and get into their head? Like, what did you do? How did you come up with the idea? What are some of the failures along the way, that led to the success? Because very seldom do I think things like just go perfectly the first time around. If you read any entrepreneur's story, it's usually failure after failure. What is Thomas Edison? It's like, it took 10,000 tries to get the light bulb or whatever, and the Dyson vacuum was like thousands of failures before you finally got one that worked. So sometimes it's trying different things. And as an artist, it's like the gap. Ira Glass talks about the gap. I feel like we could do a whole episode on any one of these topics.
We should.
Like you have to be bad at something before you're good at it. You have to be a bad guitar player before you become a good guitar player. You have to be a bad painter before you ever become a good painter. Like, that's just part of the process. And it can be painful, especially when you're like, I want to be great, but this sounds horrible when I play the piccolo. But like, keep practicing, keep working on it. Maybe not in public. Maybe like work at it in your bedroom before you actually share this with the public. Maybe you make a bunch of YouTube videos that never get posted because they're not good yet, but you're learning and growing and getting better at it. Maybe recording a lot of music, drawing a lot of work on our craft before sharing that with the world and try to create something good. But even the first things that we share might not be our best.
They will not be our best. Yeah. But what I think is amazing about being at SEEK 2024 is that if you look at the vendors around us, all the people here, we're surrounded by people who have failed countless times, who continue to stand up, continue to make good things, and they're presenting here, they're talking here, they're selling their merchandise here. And so we thought, what a perfect opportunity to reach out to one of them, to invite them to hear their story, to invite them to share their insights with us.
Yeah. So if you said like, who's somebody that's really doing well in like the creative space and stuff like that, I would say my friend Scott Williams over at Sacrilegious.
Scott Williams at Sacrilegious.
Scott, let's give a round of applause for Scott Williams. He's here. He's going to join us. Yeah. Woo! Sacrilegious, if you don't know, give you a little background. Also, Catholic Concept. Oh, yeah, here. Sacrilegious is just like a fraction of what you're doing now. But if you don't know about Sacrilegious, there's socks that are religious. It's kind of very well self-explanatory.
It's all in the name.
Maybe just as a few examples, Scott, what socks are you wearing today?
I'm wearing St. Dominic.
St. Dominic, all right. And what's on the sock besides St. Dominic?
So Our Lady gave the rosary to St. Dominic, right? So there is a rosary that is wrapped around it, and then St. Dominic also has a dog often depicted with him. So with like a torch, and some people think it looks like a cigar, like the dog is smoking a cigar, which is kind of fun, but actually it's a torch. And he had I believe a dream that he would be preaching fire. His mom had some sort of dream that he would set the world on fire through his preaching, and that's where that came from.
Yeah. I am wearing the brand new.
Oh.
Can we get this on camera? Get a stretch. The St. Veronica.
Beautiful.
My youngest child, my daughter, is Veronica. Darnell, which socks are you wearing?
So I grew up at a parish called San Jose Obrero, St. Joseph the Worker, so I had to go with the St. Joseph socks. So right here.
Yes.
And they are adorned with my favorite quote from St. Joseph at the heel. And if you don't know what that means, go and look at them because it's very clever.
And that's what I like about the socks. There's a cleverness to it. On the St. Veronica ones, there's VI.
Right.
VI.
Do you know what that means?
Well, I had to think about what it was, the number. But yeah, it's St. Veronica's Station of the Cross.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Which if you asked me what station is St. Veronica, I wouldn't have been able to tell you until I got the socks.
Yeah, Station VI.
But that's the clever, like, it's like a Catholic inside joke.
That's right.
Right? The dog with the torch, inside joke. VI, inside joke. The bottom of the St. Joseph socks, which I have 5 pair of, by the way, one for every day of the work week. They've got quotations on each end with blank in between.
Because he was never quoted in the Bible.
That's right. That's right.
And we usually put a quote on the bottom of the sock, so that way there's something to remember by that. But yeah, that's one of my favorites.
So I just think there's a certain amount of just like fun and goofiness about them. I mean, they're socks, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it definitely has my personality as part of it as well. Like our company kind of has taken on a personality of itself where, you know, it's fun to be Catholic. Like, I think that we get into this mindset that like Catholicism is boring, or that at least that there's a perception of that.
There's some boring Catholics out there.
There are some boring Catholics out there, but there's a lot that are a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And like our faith is beautiful and amazing, and it should be reverent, but that doesn't mean that you can't have fun in the process, right?
Yeah.
Because fun and humor is attractive, and that's what we want to do.
That's true. That's true. And so, why the socks though? Like, how was that the idea that won?
Yeah, I don't know. So I worked in Catholic youth ministry for about 10 years. That's where Kyle and I met originally. Yeah. And I was working at the Archdiocese of Indianapolis when, toward the end of that career, and I was wearing a suit and tie to work most days, and socks became the fun thing that I wore to work, because I had to be a little bit more professional. Mm-hmm. And then, so I'd wear like donut socks on National Donut Day, or I'd wear, American flag socks to celebrate the patriotic holidays. And one day, my wife and I were just driving to Chicago, and we thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to celebrate feast days instead of, these national holidays that are sometimes made up?
Yeah.
So we thought, well, why not? So let's make some socks. I looked at Google real quick, and nobody was doing this yet. So we were like, well, what if we wore, St. Michael socks on the Feast of the Archangels, or we got to wear our St. Joseph socks on the one of many St. Joseph feast days. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the idea behind it. But what we found is that it's become much more than that. But that's the original idea.
But it can be a very subtle way to evangelize, right? You're just wearing the socks, and if somebody happens to see them and they ask, like, oh, what's on your socks? Tell them, this is St. Veronica. And then it's a foot in the door.
Write that down, Josh. So it's definitely a conversation starter. We like to say that we start conversations through joyful products. So when I was working in ministry, and I'm sure a lot of the focus missionaries that are on campuses can really relate to this as well, that I always thought that the hardest part about evangelization was really starting the conversation. And the socks themselves don't evangelize. That'd be cool if they did. But we are the people that need to evangelize. But, if somebody sees a fun decorated sock with somebody that they're not sure about, it's definitely a door to start that conversation. And then we get the opportunity to then share our witness of faith in some capacity. And sometimes we can also tell a story about the saint on the socks as well, because there's fun little, talking points.
Some little tidbits about it.
Yeah.
So how often do you get people requesting saints for their socks?
Oh, constantly. And like some saints I've never even heard of before. Like people love the devotions that they have, but yeah, all the time.
So I've got 4 kids.
Yep.
And you've got 3 of the socks already.
Is today the day that I get another suggestion?
Yes, it is. Because I've got the Sebastian socks, we got the St. Francis socks, I've got the Veronica socks now. I've got an Xavier Paul, so either one.
Okay.
If you could do St. Francis Xavier or St. Paul. Do you have St. Paul socks? That seems like an easy one.
Do we? Yeah, we do.
Oh.
Yeah, recently, within the last year.
Well, all right, I'll get them.
You have some shopping to do.
Okay. Not in kid size, probably.
No, not in kids.
Yeah, okay. But that's the cool. You got kid socks, adult socks, everything.
And you can grow into them.
And of course, like now you've expanded into T-shirts and mugs and everything.
Yeah.
So here's how do you decide which is the next sock that you're going to do?
So usually we try to do it out in advance because we make the socks in-house. So like for us to plan, prepare, we try to do it far out in advance. So,
and hang on, whenever you say you make them in-house, you're literally like weaving the sock together in-house, like
in Indianapolis, Indiana, we have 10 knitting machines we go from yarn to final product out the door.
Yeah.
It's been that's not the way it started, but it's the way that the way we've kind of grown into, which is, it's been a journey. But so we try to plan out at least 4 or 5 months in advance, and we'll do kind of we'll decide a quarter at a time. So we'll ask in 3 different categories. One, we send out messages on social media. I actually think one went out yesterday, and we just said like, hey, it's that time of year again. We're planning out our roster. What do you want to see? And we get some feedback from there. We have a running list of when people like send us email and say like, hey, you don't have St. Kevin yet. And we'll, all right, we'll write down St. Kevin. So we consult that list. We also look on our website to see like, what are saints that people are searching for on our site that we don't have?
Oh, so that's interesting.
We use that a little bit as well. And then there's also just still like heavy hitters that we know would be, big name popular saints that we need to add to the roster.
Can you give us a scoop, like what's coming out next?
If I knew them off the top of my head, I definitely could.
Okay.
That's embarrassing. I don't know.
I want to take this back though. So this is not something you could have ever dreamed of doing, right? So growing up, like what was the goal? Like what did you want to be? What did you want to do? And what were the doors that God opened for you to end up where you're at now? How did you recognize that call?
Yeah, when I was in college, I wanted to actually go into law enforcement. And so I graduated from undergrad during a recession. And when I graduated, I wanted to work in some type of public service, whether that was as a police officer or for like a city or something like that. And the entire city was on a hiring freeze. So there was there was 2 jobs in the city of Indianapolis, like proper, like the entire city, every level of government, everything. One was the city controller and the other one was lifeguard. And I was not qualified for either one of those. So so that was kind of the goal. When I graduated from college, I don't know if they do it anymore, but I did the Crossroads Walk, which is like a pro-life walk across the country.
You wear the pro-life shirt?
Yep. And that was actually more of like, I went into it more as an adventure than it was like I'm like at that level in my faith. So that was actually something that really drew me in a lot deeper. And so during that time, you actually go to mass every single day at a different church as you walk across the country. You pray the rosary every day, you do the litany of the hours. It's a very intense spiritual exercise. I became very much more Catholic during those 3 months. When I came back, I started going to daily mass on a regular basis again. And then when you go to daily mass as a single young man at your family parish, then like people are like, well, he should be a priest. And I was like, well, I don't feel that call right now, but I got into youth ministry, which I thought I would hate, but then I found out that, I really actually love this. I love being on the journey with people. But it was still during the recession, so I went into the alcohol industry. I was a wine salesman, which is a recession-proof industry.
Unfortunately.
And people drink when it's a good time, and people drink when it's a poor time. But so I did that for about 8 months, and I learned kind of tactical sales, but I was still doing the youth ministry thing. So I went into youth ministry. This turned out to be a long answer to a short question. And I loved it. So I did that for 10 years. I worked at a parish for 3 years. I worked at the diocese. I got a master's degree in pastoral ministry. I had no desire to leave that. But there was this was just kind of a fun idea that came up and turned into a real thing. And we knew that we couldn't ignore what was happening in front of us. Like, people loved the product and we had to continue after.
Was it a side hustle?
Yeah.
It
was definitely a side hustle. It was something that we did like on the weekends. And what happened is I started working on it. Like I'd wake up early to work on the business. I'd, work on customer service for a half hour during my lunch break. And then into the evening, it started eating into family time. So we jumped into it full time then.
What's something that you learned during the process of like what not to do, or like if you had to do it over, is there something you would have done differently?
I think the biggest thing that makes companies successful, and the biggest thing that is going to be everybody's cliche answer, but it's people. Like, people are always the answer, and I've done a phenomenal. I have a phenomenal team. Like, and I wish I would have. Like, the answer is always, I wish I would have done something sooner or made a decision sooner. We've been really fortunate to have an incredible group of people that have been a part of the mission that we are doing, that have been bought in. Excuse me. I think that the biggest thing that I would say, that if I could do something different, would be to be better and learn the skill better of being able to share the vision of where we're heading as a company. So, like, you can have the greatest people in the world, but if you don't know where the ship is sailing, like, it's really hard for people to get on board. And that wasn't always a skill set of mine. Like, what happens between my ears was not always something that came out of my mouth. So I've had to learn really to do that in different and more effective ways.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I like that you said, like, you lead with, like, it's the people, right? And so what do you think is important to look at when you're, like, choosing to align yourself with, like, with an organization, with a group of people, when you're hiring, whatever that may be, because not everybody's going to go start a company.
Right.
But other people, like, they want to have good jobs. They want to have a good company culture. They want to have good work-life balance.
Yeah.
Like, how do you consider those things as you're working? Is it like you step into it and then you adjust on the fly, or are there criteria that we should meet before you even step into the possibility?
Like types of employees, or?
Well, no, more of the, like, how do you make sure that there's a good work culture surrounding whatever you enter? And, like, what are things to watch out for to make sure that either exists or doesn't exist, so you know?
Yeah, so we live and breathe on what we consider to be the core values of our company. Mm-hmm. And we're a public, not a public company, but we're a private company. We're not a nonprofit organization. So while we don't necessarily put the word like God and Jesus into those core values, they're rooted in the Catholic social teaching. So what we try to do is, and we live and breathe by that. So we hire, we fire, we promote and reward people based on how they're living that out. So I would say personality and culture is very big to us, because we need those people to live and breathe what we're doing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah, that's exactly the answer we were looking for. Yeah.
Well, and I think when we're talking about quality artwork, how have you prioritized that? And I mean, I don't know if you've failed at it at times. You feel like, we put out something out and it's like we had to redesign it or something like that. Because I think so often we get this impression of, like, it was good for a Catholic thing. Like, like she's a good musician for a Catholic musician, or it was a good movie for a Christian movie. Yeah. Like this, like, substandard, like, expectations. Like, where do you put expectations, and how important is that to the culture?
Yeah, I'd put that in, like, two different. I mean, one of our core values is excellence. Like, we we charge $15.99 for a pair of socks, which is, like, a very expensive pair of socks, but it's also a really ridiculously high quality pair of socks. And we spare no expense to make sure that the quality meets that expectation beyond measure. So we have really high quality control standards. But, like, from the other side of that question, more on, like, the beauty of the product, I think it's also being okay with, like, saying, okay, that's the one that we did, but we can do it better now. So, like, we've learned more, we've gotten better, let's do it again. And, like, not being afraid to say, like, let's try that again, even though it's going to be more work.
Yeah. How often have you redesigned a Saint sock?
We do it actually pretty consistently, which is kind of a pain, but, like, going through, like, the process of developing the manufacturing process in-house, like, we had to realign our standards based on what we could do versus what we had made before. So part of that we were forced into, but part of it was also, like, a choice.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to stress or to talk about, right? That idea of, like, iteration, of keeping them trying, of, like, making a thing, recognizing that it's falling short of the ideal version of it. And at some points, that's all you can do, right? That's given the technology you have, given the skill set that you have. Yeah. But that desire to continue to improve when you have the technology to do so, when you have the skill set to do so, and then improving it is what makes us better, and it's what makes your socks good.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Again, another core value, this turned out to be a core value speech, but another one is like innovation, like always continually trying to get better, to make, reinvent ourselves to be better. Like we consistently are trying to do that. So it's really important for us. And sometimes like my team, it's annoying to them, but like it's part of who we are.
Which like kind of gets into a question of like, what is the balance that you see, or maybe what would you challenge us to is like, there's one side says like, just start putting stuff out there. Like just start your YouTube channel, just start like getting it out there and you're going to improve as you go, versus another extreme would say like, keep working at your craft before you have, and then put out something that's excellent.
Yeah.
Like at what point is like, let's learn by doing versus let's work on it, and like once we finally got it, like bam, here it is, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm very much more on the former than the latter on that. So I think that the biggest thing is knowing when to course correct and like when to, and the market will tell you. Yeah. Like that's the biggest thing is like the market will tell you whether or not something is good or bad, and we've experienced that in different ways. But like I think that you can get into that analysis by paralysis situation where you can look at every flaw, every possibility. But again, like start the conversation, do the thing, like let the Holy Spirit intercede. I mean, or like if you're clearly hearing the Lord tell you like not to do something, you can also listen to that. But don't be like, I mean, over and over again, the most common phrase in the Bible is be not afraid, right? Like putting yourself out there is okay. And even if it's not the best, like you will get better because you put it out there. Same thing with like goals. If you tell people what your goals are or where you're headed, you're more likely to stick to that. If you keep it to yourself and like think about it and like decide and have that friction, then you can change that goal in your head 7 times.
Absolutely. And as you say all this, right? What does a support system look like for you? Like you're putting it out there. You're saying these are the goals that I have, the expectations that I have. What do your friends say? What does your family say? How do they support you in achieving those goals?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are like, people still buying those socks. Do you really have a real business? And like, it's
the disbelief still exists. Yes.
There's some of that, but like we've built a company, an organization that's been thriving. We've got a team of people that are bought in on our mission, and I have an incredible leadership team that has been phenomenal for me. But the biggest thing for me is I've also been very aware that I need mentorship in my life. So I've been big in the world of trying to find people that get what I'm doing, and they've been able to pour into me in different ways, and just being able to bounce ideas, questions off them in ways that I wouldn't be able to do in different ways.
Cool. So one of the things we want to highlight, people that are doing great art in the church on this show. That's why we invited you here. But I guess one question to extend to you is, who do you think is doing a great job right now? What's something that you've been impressed by, a person that's really doing great work in the church, or just like, I guess anywhere too?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be at a Focus event and be at Seek and not think about the magnitude of what Focus is doing for the church. Yeah. I'm legitimately incredibly inspired by the work that's been put on. And like, think about, pipeline and dreaming. This started, 25 some odd years ago, right? And to see what it is today, and I would say that I'm also somewhat of Focus was on my campus the year I graduated. And one of the things that got me to go back to church was a Focus missionary. And like, I was never in like the whole pipeline, but that's the power of invitation. That's the beauty of invitation. It was someone offered me a piece of cake on Mary's birthday and invited me to church.
That was it.
Yeah.
Wow. And like, for anybody that's here at Seek, you see the production that's going on, and you can see like, all right, they're kind of putting a lot of investment into this, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways that they could cut corners and make it cheaper, and it wouldn't be as great of an experience for people.
Yep.
But they're like pulling out the stops.
Yeah,
absolutely. Even like the stage is like well decorated, and it's a lot of fun. So, I think even on like an artistic level and an investment in quality, like they've obviously made this a priority here at Seek, and the ministry that they do with the missionaries as well.
Absolutely.
That's a great example.
Thanks.
And I think we just
You're
want to...
smart.
He is. And I think we want to end with just asking you for just like a nugget of wisdom that you can offer other people who are in the boat of like, I want to do something. I want it to be beautiful, and I want it to be good, and I want it to serve others, but I don't know where to start, or I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say?
It's a little bit redundant from what we talked about earlier, but just do it. Like, put yourself out there, do it. Be okay failing. Like, failing's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is like when I'll give the example of when I was in working in ministry, and the decision. A lot of entrepreneurs that I've been in different situations have often asked me like, when do I go into it full time?
Yeah, right.
And like I think that it is a hard decision because it's risk and there's stability in what you're doing, but like there's a reason that you're good at the things that you're doing. And there's a reason that what you have has traction, but like it's okay to fail, and it's okay to then course correct. And I just decided that, I could find another job if I needed to. If this didn't work out, I could still support my family because I don't know. I think I'm valuable.
Yeah.
I believe in myself.
I believe in you. Sometimes.
Yeah. Don't always believe in me.
Well, thank you, Scott, for joining us. Scott Williams, Sock Religious. It's sockreligious.com.
Right.
T-shirts and stuff you can get there from Sock Religious.
Yeah, or CatholicConcepts.com is kind of the umbrella company that has all the different things that we're going into, but Sock Religious is a good place to go to.
It's so fun to see like this just explode, and I think every third Facebook post that I see is a Sock Religious ad.
Oh, good, the internet's working.
So you're paying for my Facebook. I think is what's happening. So thanks for joining us, and thank you all for listening. This will be part of the Seek podcast, but also you can subscribe to Survivor's Bias in any podcast app, and we're going to be exploring all kinds of different creative ventures and things that we appreciate, and some of the behind the scenes behind people that are creating awesome stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for being here with us today.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. For more info on the SEEK conference, visit seek.focus.org. This episode of the SEEK24 podcast was produced by Spoke Street. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.